Hello guys, this is Rajan. Welcome to Learn Testing Easy at Home channel. Today we are going to learn defect life cycle. And we know what is a defect. It is a variance between expected and actual result that is found by test engineer. And to trace the status of the defect, we need defect life cycle. It's because of whenever test engineer finds the defect, he has to communicate the defect through developer as he has to locate and fix it, and we have to trace the status. So for that we need a defect life cycle, and this is a defect life cycle that we followed, and it will be varied from company to company, but here we followed this defect life cycle. And whenever test engineer finds a defect, first of all he has to reconfirm it is that really defect or not, and after that he has to check for duplicate defect. It's because of same module will be shared by two engineers, three engineers, like that. There may be chance as whatever the defect that is found by test engineer, it might have been reported by some other tester. So first of all, whenever test engineer finds a defect, he has to make sure was it already reported or not. If it is not already reported by some other test engineer, then he has to log the details of the defect in defect tracking tool. At that time, status for that defect is new. Then then that defect has to be analyzed by development lead, and he checks is that valid defect or not. If it is not a valid defect, then he will change the status of the defect will be changed from new to invalid. So invalid defect has to be cross-checked by business analyst. As business analyst knows about the requirement very well, he has to check it is that really an invalid defect or not. If it is really an invalid defect, then its status will be changed from invalid to closed. If it is a valid defect, then its status will be changed from invalid to reopen. It's because of here either test engineer or else developer may have misunderstood the defect, and it has to be cross checked by the business analyst. As he knows about the requirement very well, he will decide it. And next one, so if it is a valid defect, then development lead has to check is that already reported or not by some other tester. If it is already reported by some other tester, the status of that defect will be changed from new to duplicate defect, and duplicate defect has to be cross checked again with the test engineer. And test engineer checks is that already reported or not. If it is already reported, then status for that defect will be changed from duplicate to closed. If it is not, the status of that defect will be changed from duplicate to reopen. Then again, if it is not a duplicate defect, then he will assign that then development lead will assign that defect to a developer to locate and fix it. Then status will be changed from new to assigned. After that, developer to whom it has been already assigned, he has to reproduce the defect in which environment it was found. He has to reproduce the defect in the same environment only. If it is if it is not a reproducible defect, then its status will be changed from assigned to not reproducible. Then test engineer has to update the steps. Then he has to update the test data which is required to reproduce the defect. Then he has to update build number and the test case. Then again its status will be changed from not reproducible to reopen. So if it is a reproducible defect, then developer will locate and fix it. Once the defect is fixed, its status will be changed from assigned to fixed. Then test engineer has to cross check it is that really fixed or not. For that he has to perform retesting. Here he has to re-execute the same test case again, by which test case he could find the defect. He has to execute the same test case again. If it is really fixed, then he will change the status of the defect from fixed to closed. If it is not fixed, then its status will be changed from fixed to reopen. Whether the defect is fixed or not, as code changes were occurred, regression testing has to be done. Before performing regression testing, first of all, we have to perform impact analysis. By that impact analysis, we can get to know which feature will get impacted due to that changes. And we perform we perform regression testing on those impacted features. And if you find any defect in that impacted features, then same process again. First of all, test engineer has to reconfirm is that really a defect or not. After that, he has to check for duplicate defects. Then he has to log the details of the defect in defect tracking tool. Suppose development lead checks is that a valid defect or not, and it is a valid defect, but no developer is available to assign the defect, or else if you want to fix the defect in future releases, at that time status for that defect will be changed from new to postponed. The next status is cannot be fixed. Suppose whatever the defect that is found by test engineer, that is a valid defect, but if the cost of fixing the defect is very high compared to losses incurred due to not fixing the defect, or else if technology is not there to fix the defect, at that time status for that defect will be changed from new to cannot be fixed. And the last one is request for enhancement. Suppose the defect which is found by test engineer, actually that is not a defect, and if it is an enhancement to the product, at that time either it can be considered or it cannot be considered. It totally depends upon the business analyst. It's because of he represents the product, he knows about the requirement. And so if it is required, then it has to be fixed, then it has to be fixed by developer. If it is not required, then its status will be changed from new to request for enhancement. If that enhancement is required, if that enhancement is supported by business analyst, then its status will be changed from new to assigned. If it is not, as it is not a defect, then its status will be changed from new to request for enhancement. And this is the defect life cycle, and the same process will be followed. So whenever a new defect is found by test engineer, and by this defect life cycle we can track and view the status of the defect very easily. And that's it guys. I think you have understood the concept of defect life cycle, what is the requirement of defect life cycle, what is defect. I think you have understood. I hope you might have understood the concept. Thank you guys, thank you so much.